Okay. Hello, everybody. Greetings from Dubai. This is Henry Misha Kerber. Many in Goa only know me under Misha, but actually that was a nickname, so it's me, Henry, here. And it's now 40 years ago that I had this most crazy train trip to the Kumbh Mela in Haridwar at the feet of the Himalaya. And a good dear friend of mine, a godly friend of mine, he recommended to just do a few broadcasts and maybe reach out to people who are seeking for truth like I did 40 years ago. I was kind of searching for the best music, pretty girls, whatever, the usual thing you do as a young man. And through a friend, I got to know stories about Goa, India, that this was a place where we were to be, where the scene had moved and developed. So I wrote a little book about this, my story, a great part of my life there, and the book is called Goa Dancing with the Speakers, and I just want to read in every recording we do. I read a part, and I invite you to join me and to pick up a few things from those days, and also about how God was leading the whole story. Okay, so I start here with giving thanks to some people who helped me with this book, because I'm not an author or something, but I felt compelled to put down some of these thoughts, which touched me very much in my heart. So I want to thank here, dear reader, I'd like to express my thankfulness to a couple of people who helped me writing this book. Shanaz, my dear wife, who again looked after me so faithfully while I was writing, especially the second part of my story. Recovering still from my latest tummy operation. I was in a hospital in Dubai, and it was crazy. It was during the COVID time. I just had recovered from COVID, and then I needed to get another tummy operation done, which was quite an experience. Also, I want to thank Wills, who, despite of the delay of almost 2 years, wrote back to me excitedly about reading the first part of my book, which gave me such a boost when I was struggling with the sleepless nights in this COVID ward recovering from my operation. And also, and especially, a big thank you to Babs, Bertie's wife, as without her the book would never have been published. She was the one who gave me wise counsel after reading my manuscript as a first person, but not only that, it was her who gave me the idea to publish it as a Kindle book. And without her encouraging words, I never would have fought through on doing this. And lastly, I'd like to thank Jerry Young from Partridge Publisher, who never gave up in reconnecting and phoning again and again, just in the right time when I was lying in this COVID ward, to get through to my stubborn ego, to not only inspire me to write the second part, but also to go ahead and finally get the book published in paperback. Thank you to all you were God sent. Okay, here I apologize for, you won't find Oxford English on these pages, since I'm German from birth, but I'm writing in English as was, and it still is a language everybody in Goa uses, no matter what nation people came from. Now I need to express a few warnings. Passages from drug taking or indulging in rave and dance music, as mentioned in my testimony, do not reflect my present stand on these things or endorse my approval of this deceiving lifestyle. Since I became a Christian almost 34 years ago, now it's, 40 years ago, I have not taken any drugs anymore, knowing how destructive and deadly they are. The enemy of our souls laughs when he sees people engaging in these dangerous habits. These passages are simply demonstrating my wrong attitude in the past, how blind I was and how careless, in endangering my eternal welfare like many others who were not so lucky and paid the ultimate price for it, their soul possibly being lost in eternity. In Christ, I didn't need drugs anymore, and it was and is possible to stay away from smoking, from alcohol, or any of these things altogether. I did also quit most of this music I described but in this book, but I must admit it was harder than anything else, and still to this day it's challenging. This explains why a biblical understanding of music as described in this book is so vital to stand our ground. Okay, so far so good. I will skip the contents. You will find out anyway if you have a look in this book. And I like to start with this picture, which is basically showing the beauty of Goa in one stroke. It says here, possibly the road along Chapora Bay. Goa, I never kind of knew anything about this place, but it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life. It's so lush, it's so rich with vegetation and everything, it's amazing. Now I must say some of the names of the people in this story might have been changed to ensure privacy. The rest of the story is true according to my memories. Okay, let's start. Chapter 1, Dancing with the Speakers, my story, the wild 80s in Goa. In starting my story of searching for the best sound, as well as some truth in this world, I'd like to underline that some of the extraordinary features of this true story are not due to any skills or achievements on my behalf, but solely due to a divine guidance of a blind seeker. The masterful composing of a rich and infinite colorful journey to the marvelous truth in Christ belongs to God and his loving Savior Jesus Christ alone. Glory, praise and honor solely belong to him. It was in the 80s, probably 1983 or so, when I once again climbed the stairs of the noble discotheque Sugar Shake in downtown Munich. One of the girls, Connie, I had met in Café Münchner Freiheit, or was it in the Roundup in Schwabing, where the hard rock scene used to hang out, helped me to get into the Sugar Shake, which was still quite exclusive, not for everybody. Although I often would hitchhike into town and barely could afford more than 1 or 2 drinks in this posh nightclub, I somehow was accepted by the door crew. One of the girls there seemed to like me. It must have been something like that, as my outfit rather placed me as an outsider in there. Not many men had long curly hair like me, army boots, biker leggings, and the craziest but coolest leather jacket in town. There it was all about being it, having your personal Jack Daniels bottle, hanging out with the hottest girls, and spending lots of cash. I didn't really like the sugar scene, but the girls were beautiful. And the sound was quite okay at times. Usually I would like to go there at 1 a.m., most of the time quite stoned. It was funny, during these days I worked as a church organ builder in a little company at the outskirts of Munich. I loved the workshop at first sight, and it had character plus. An old horse stable with ancient beams and wood-burning stoves, a huge high open plan bench and constructing room right under the roof, and a machine-crammed production room below. At the back we had an overgrown garden with beehives, woodsheds, and a huge old pendulum saw, still used by those who had the guts to do it. That thing was brutal. The saw blade had this diameter, and when that started with an old belt, boy, the noise was brutal. Anyway, the wages were tight, but we worked with the most beautiful timbers you can imagine. Virtually exclusive solid oak, pine, large mahogany, ebony, plum wood, sycamore, and more and more. My favorite was fresh yellow cedar though, as it smelled beautifully, almost like dope, I must admit. When he had finished building an organ, a big consecration service took place, and afterwards everybody involved got drunk. Though I was not religious at all, I didn't like it. These churchy people were somehow hypocritical, but they paid our wages. I was always looking for the best sound you could get in town. In certain record shops, I turned up so regularly that they would treat me like a DJ and I could listen into as many records I wanted. Often I was lucky if I found one good song amidst all the commercial garbage. Keith Emerson from the Nice had left a deep impression on me, but as ELP they were struggling to come up with something better than Aquatarcus. I loved John McLaughlin, jazz rock, Terry Ripdahl, the spaced out Norwegian, Gentle Giant, Frank Zappa, Yes, Herbie Hancock, and all that. Then there was this ethno label with guys like Keith Jarrett, Jack DeJohnette, John Abercrombie, and so on. John Abercrombie made a record called Timeless. Listen to it if you can, it's amazing. And so on. But at some point there was a new sound available. Frankie's Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, Propaganda, and such bands started to emerge on the scene. Okay, let me see. How long are we? Oh, we still have some time. Okay. Anyway, back to that night at the Sugar Shake, which would change my life for good. Now the names I'm using in this true story might not be real to protect these people's privacy. Some of them I left as they were. I was dancing away. They had huge speakers there, which was pretty cool and loud as well, when I suddenly saw this blonde crazy girl which stood out from all the rest. She looked like Brigitte Bardot, but better, wilder, not tall, but a class on her own. Somehow our eyes met and we exchanged a few words. All I remember is that she said something like, "Will I see you again?" before she left, following a wild-looking Jamaican guy. I was in turmoil. I knew I had to see her again. She was the hottest chick in town, and best was she seemed to like me. I saw her again. Her name was Stephanie, but things were not that easy. Her guy was crazy about her and she wanted out of that relationship. Although he was extremely good looking, he had a habit of getting drunk and then violent. She had enough of that, but she was scared to leave him. He would be the guy who would stop at nothing if anybody came too close to his girl. We stayed in contact, but Stephanie didn't seem to have the strength to finish the relationship. Winter of '83 approached, and Stephanie told me that she and a friend of hers would go to Goa. Friends had told her that the scene would be much cooler there, and she had enough of the Munich hip scene anyway. As we knew each other reasonably well, she asked me if I would like to pick her up when she would come back from Goa. Sitting at the Rima airport, in those days it was the Rima airport, on a sunny January day at 1984, I couldn't wait to see her, but she never came out of that arrival lounge. Upon asking the staff about her and her friend's whereabouts, I found myself interviewed by two cops who wanted all my personal details as well as information about my relationship with her. A couple of days later, she called me and we met. The cops had found drugs on her and on her friend upon arrival at the airport, but somehow they got away with it due to small amounts or so. What followed then was Stephanie's 2-hour rage on about the coolest place on earth, Goa. Acid parties, freaks, best sound on the planet, parties under the open sky, all night till 10 o'clock in the morning, sometimes raving on for a whole weekend. Drugs as much as you wanted, the best DJs of their time, sunshine only, beaches as far as the eye can see. I knew where I would go next. While I was saving some cash during summer 1984, I also started to get established in my new home. The crazy old workshop which I was able to rent after my boss had decided to move the organ workshop to a bigger premise. I had installed a swing in the upper room where Gerald and I used to compete in swinging as high as 5 meters to the ceiling, inspired by the latest music we had discovered in the stores. Blasting out of the speakers whilst getting totally stoned. Then off to the Munich night scene. I drove a totally wrecked 2 CD Citroen, but the stereo was good and Gerald would turn the next joint. The Thief from Tangerine Dream was a classic for our rides, and we were so lucky to never have caused a major accident. At that time, I used to read stuff like Charles Bukowski, The Man with the Leather Bag, or Bummi Baumann's Wie alles anfing, background stories of the German left-wing scenes. I also had started to use one of the rooms downstairs to build up my own sound studio. Manfred, my old pal from school, helped me putting the things together. He was keen as well, as we used to play together trying to get a rock band started. He played the guitar and I would swap from drums to keyboards. Often when I would come home on the weekends from the clubs at about 4:30 a.m., I would go into the studio, roll a joint and get into a session with a drum machine as a basic background, and then layered over it heavy Hammond organ sounds, completely with a dirty Moog SMT rage. Boy, that was loud, but the sound insulation did its job. At times, Gerald, one of my best pals, would come, stoned out of his face, to enjoy a session. Still don't know how good or horrible it was for a normal person's ear, but we both agreed some of the sessions were better sound than any one record could ever produce. By that time, maxi singles had started to dominate the music scene, and the sound quality of these maxis was incredible. Remixes, dub versions were the only thing accepted anymore. End of '84, I had bought my flight ticket to Bombay, India, and hardly could wait to board the plane. Unfortunately, Stephanie's guy had decided to come with her to Goa, too. Although their relationship was really on the rocks, so we decided to meet just there. The weather had turned really cool in Germany, and although my workshop, my atelier home, was really cool, it was also freezing cold, as there was no central heating. One more reason to turn my back to Germany for 3 full months. Already on the plane, I saw where this was going. Lots of alternative folk, hippie-type people were excited to get away from cold Europe. I met Angie, who picked up I was going to Goa, and she filled me in a bit about where to go, where to stay, etc. Arriving in Bombay Airport in January '85, I was shocked about the stench which hit me once out of the plane. Inside the airport it was bearable, but as soon as we were out the doors, I was overwhelmed by this incredible smell of sewage, fouling, decay and disease. Angie had told me one way to get the 500 miles down to Goa was by ferry boat, and I liked that idea. So I got the next bus to the harbor. The stench still followed merciless. I knew that Bombay was not the place I ever wanted to get stuck. However, the crowded streets, the worn but impressive buildings, the mad traffic were so intensive, so colorful, I was just amazed. I got on the boat, and about lunchtime we left Bombay Harbor to set for the open sea. Fresh air was such a treat. I never would have thought to appreciate it so much. I was told to be careful with my luggage, as theft was a daily routine. I settled down near a large family with lots of cute smiling kids and parents. I felt I could trust okay. Time flew as I was immersed into real Indian day-to-day life. The only dreaded moments were when I had to use the onboard lavatory, which strongly reminded me of the smell in the slums outside the airport. After a relaxing 20-hour trip along the Indian west coast, including a night sleeping on the floor planks, I finally arrived in Panjim, Goa. A shared taxi took us to where Angie had given me the address, where I might get a room straight away. It was Kalangut, near the bus station. So far to Southwest, and in a couple of days we continue with the story. See you then, all the best, bye bye.